Welcome all to the first official episode and live stream of the Fear the North podcast. My name is Ari Harris. I am accompanied by Sapphire, along with journalist and established author Chris Murray. Thank you all for joining us. We appreciate your time. I know it's a little bit later than it would be, but we're more than happy to be here. And thank you all for tuning in to the Fear the North podcast, where we dive into AFC North football and really give you a different perspective and lens through hard hitting, gritty football in the cold. The closest thing to Gladiator School in Antarctica at that. So right now we understand
Gladiator.
that you like that, yeah. We understand that week
That's
four
cold.
very cold. We understand that week four has come to an end. We have a lot going on within the division. No more is it going through first week sample sizes, but now there's more than enough evidence and proof to speak on what is happening to these teams and what we can expect going forward. Quite a bit to dive into. Now, the first team. Is there anywhere where you guys would like to start before I just throw a dart and choose a team?
Why don't we just go with the crappiest first and get
All
it
right.
done?
Yeah.
Right? I'm in a sour mood right now, gentlemen. If you couldn't tell.
We'll let you go. Okay, all right. We'll let you go off in the next 20. By crappiest, that would mean within the standings, that last place, or technically tied for last place, though it doesn't feel like that, would be the Cleveland Browns, who are 1-3, coming off another loss, their third loss in the first four games of the season, 2016 to the Las Vegas Raiders. Quite a bit to dive into. I'll let Sapphire take the lead on this. Sapphire, please. Soapbox.
So being on the North Coast, I'm inundated with all of these non-positive messages. People want to blame Deshaun Watson for another Browns loss. And I'm just over this whole thing. Like, it's just not one player. It's just not one faction of the team. The whole team is stinking up the joint. And for me, listen, we played the Raiders and lost a game that, number one, we needed to win, okay? And we didn't. And now we're going back to the NFC North. I think the Browns are in great position to lose these next two games, thus making it 4 consecutive losses. That's where I want to start the conversation.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. I saw the second half of that game. I was watching that, and I think that the Browns had their shots to win that game. Especially they had the ball. I was curious about some of the play calling, and I don't know why. I'm trying to looking at the box score here, and I'm looking at the targets. How many times they targeted uh, Amari? They targeted Amari Cooper and Jerry Judy 8 and 9 times respectively. But the chemistry, Sapphire, looking at that team is not right. That was a winnable game. That to be clear, the Raiders. I mean, they drove the ball, and I thought that Ford broke off his best run of probably the whole season. He had a 35-yard run deep into Oakland territory. I didn't understand half the play calling. Heck, I would have run him again just to gash them again. And I think at the end of the day, and then to the line didn't protect. The line did not protect Deshaun Watson well in that situation. The line just did not protect him, and I just looked at it like I was looking at the big play in that series when they had the ball, and they had the ball 1st and 10. They first of all, Watson got, I think on 1st down, Watson. Although it was a bad snap, was it a bad snap in that situation?
Yeah, you could say that.
It was a bad snap.
I'm just so agitated because there's breakdowns in all phases of the Browns game. Okay. Yes, we're riddled with injuries on the offensive line, right? I don't know what's going on with the defense. To see the Raiders run up the middle of the Browns defense Like, this is why I was on the treadmill at midnight last night, gentlemen, right? Like, you can talk about Bill Callahan no longer being here and the impact that he had, but at the end of the day, these are professional athletes. They do have a line coach. They do have a defensive coordinator. Special teams. I mean, when do we miss a field goal? I mean, an extra point. It's the little things that individually are insignificant, but when you bundle them up and roll them up into the same ball, this is what, how many points did we score? 16 points? Like, we have a premier quarterback leading our team, but it doesn't feel like he's in a system that's really tailored or customized to embellish his strengths. And it goes back to what you said, Chris, the play calling. So I'm just absolutely upside down about it, because I've lost my objectivity. I think the Cleveland Browns are a terrible football team, and I think that people are living in alternative realities if they think they're anything than that. They're a terrible football team. There's no identity. There's no will that they try to dictate on the Raiders. Just had their way with them. There were more Browns fans in that stadium than Raiders fans, but you would never know that. It's just, I wonder about the culture. I wonder about, does the coach still have command of that locker room? Does Deshaun still have the respect of his peers? Miles Garrett is hurt. They're a terrible team. I,
Yeah,
save me.
you know,
I'm gonna say, yeah, I like to get your perspective on it too, Irie, because you've seen them, you watched them.
yeah, very generous. You two are, as much as I could help, but then saving you too. I think I probably wouldn't even save myself. That's just kind of the state of everything is right now. I'll do my best to piggyback off with you guys. First off, offensively, the O line is decimating. When Ethan pushes way down, I believe Joe Batonio was pretty much the only healthy starting lineman that is. I don't, starting healthy that is, and that is not a good look at all. The chemistry does seem to be off with Watson and his pass catcher, specifically Murray Cooper and Jerry Judy. I did find it interesting to think that the only person he really has that chemistry with is newcomer Jerry Judy. During that game, and actually, let's go furthermore, right? Average separation. Amari Cooper going into this game was averaging around 2.7 yards within the average separation from his defender. Elijah Moore, 3.8 yards in average separation. Why is Elijah Moore the least targeted amongst those three wide receivers? He only had one target. He's only had four combined in the last 2 weeks. I counted last week in week 3. I counted him in pre-snap motion more times, 5, compared to targets that he's had in the last 2 weeks combined. 4. That is not a good look. As for Amari Cooper, I don't understand what is happening right now. Seeing him be back, he had a terrific bounce ball game in week 3 versus the Giants, 86 receiving yards, and then just kind of regressed once again in week 4. That's kind of been the story in 3 of the 4 games so far this season. But I will say this, and furthermore, another good point you made earlier, Chris, regarding Jerome Ford. That 35 yarder that he had in the fourth quarter, that was his only run of the quarter. That was his only
Ooh,
run of the period. Yeah, and for a team that usually has been able to survive and really operate off the run being the engine, hence Nick Chubb and how important he is to this offense, you would think he would get more carries, but not. And the last thing I will say is the play calling has been interesting. And the one thing that I feel everybody has had to look in the mirror and really take away from this game is that this loss was not on Deshaun. As much as
No.
everybody's trying to make that
no, it wasn't.
yeah, as much as everybody's trying to make that the popular take, this on Deshaun, he has to be better. This game was not on him, and it's very interesting to see people turn on those lenses and really see it from a different side. And that's also why we're here to speak on that.
It's so curious that you mentioned these things because, I think about Amari Cooper and I think about, Cleveland media is unique to its own self. There are so many times where I think they are driving the narrative and they are the proxies. It feels like sometimes they're the proxies of the team. The team gets out their messaging through the Cleveland sports media. So of course today the radio waves, television waves are inundated with the rumor mill about Devontae Adams, no longer wanting to be a Raider. happenstance the Browns just played them. And if Amari Cooper is on the trade block, right? So I think, you're already underperforming, and there's already speculation about how much the off the field machinations of the NFL are in between Amari Cooper's head. Is that why he's dropping passes that are thrown right to his chest? And then we have this. Like, this to me is a franchise full of drama and chaos. And I feel bad as a Cleveland Browns fan and for Browns Nation that we have to go through this again. Like, who's running the ship? Who's the captain of the boat? It just seems like everything about the Browns is upside down. And we're 25% of the way through the regular season. What, 1-3? Like, I'm sorry, talk to me. Like, I just want to get this out, because this does not bode well for the rest of the season. And you got Deshaun Watson out there playing his heart off, just doing the best that he can. You saw the interaction with him and DeJuan Jones on the sideline. That is as emotional as I've ever seen Deshaun Watson publicly. So where's all of that at, guys? Like, what does this mean?
Well, I look at Deshaun's numbers. He's 24 for 32, 176 yards, one touchdown, one pick. Not bad numbers in and of itself. Yeah, you noted the drop pass, but you look at the Browns as a team. It's little things I mean, your field goal kicker, who's probably one of the best in the league, you can't miss a PAT, because if they hit that PAT, they don't have to get a touchdown, and they can beat the Raiders in overtime. And I think that would have been one of those games that they would have toughed out. I didn't think Watson played a bad game.
Mm-mm.
I just think that somehow with the play call, like the on first down inside the red zone after Ford makes that run, you can't snap the ball over the quarterback's head. That's either discipline or lack thereof. I mean, it's just lack of discipline. And then two, did they try to call a screen, as I recall, some type of situation where you can move the ball in space a little bit? And I'm just asking because, and I will ask that question sometimes of the Ravens or the Eagles. God, I don't want to talk about that, but I want to stay on point. But but at the same time, you got to do something when you lose yardage in that situation. Give something back. I mean, they kept trying to go downfield and all that. Do something. Even a jet sweep, I wouldn't do it, but something. And I think that team there's a lack of continuity, and it's kind of similar to what we're seeing in Philly, but it's a lack of continuity and imagination.
Right.
And with this team, they're not. It's almost like a lot of guys. It's like an old TV series. They're great. You let the band play by itself on their own. Each player play. They sound good. When they come together, it's like, nah, man, y'all are not on the same page. That's my take of it.
Thank you.
They're
Yeah,
not on the same page.
I too am a little fatigued of seeing them approach a third and long, and instead of going further downfield, they're just signaling for Watson to throw to their running back, who's in another Texas route for the third time
Right.
again. Yeah, that also can be quite fatiguing. I can see Seth right now in your head now in agreement with that. Going over real quick to the defense though, I want to start off with this question because I mentioned to Sapphire as well earlier before the show. This is not the defense that is dominating. Sapphire, you alluded to it earlier regarding the run game. The Raiders came in with the worst rushing attack in the league, averaging 51 rushing yards a game. And suddenly they're coming in and they have over that in the first half and it finished with a 152. They have more rushing yards with 152 than Gardner Minshew did with the passing game, but 130. They killed him with the jet sweep. So I lead it with asking you two this. Is the Browns defense just not caught up fully, or has the league caught up to them?
I don't think the Browns know who they are. What's the identity of this team? I mean, I have to ask that question. Who are they? I mean, you have a quarterback that's probably not playing in his element. Why aren't they doing more RPOs and zone reads or something? find something that he's comfortable with. I mean, and Irene and Sapphire, you probably guys probably know more than I do, but who are they? And that and I have, I can look at teams now. I'm going to say this. I think that in these first 4 weeks of the season, we're still in preseason mode. For every team, some teams is worse than others. I think in Philly, I think here, I think maybe in Jacksonville, maybe in some other teams, but around the league and whatnot. But there's something the Browns don't have an idea of who they are, in my opinion. What do y'all think of that?
No, I mean, I would agree with everything you said. And for me, you look at the stats: first downs, third down efficiency, total plays, sacks, punts, penalties, all of that. They're comparable. They had parity. It's in the moments that you need to execute. When you listen to these post-game press conferences, and they always say, well, one play didn't really make a difference in the game. We should have never been in that position. Guess what? You were in that position and you didn't execute. To your point, a bad snap, a missed PAT, like dropped passes right to your chest. That to me tells me they're not well coached and they have no focused discipline. There's no one that's making them feel in practice, when you do this, here's a consequence, and beat that into them. So when they show up game time, they're not making these stupid mistakes that cost them the game. It's a situational sport. You have to execute. And the Browns aren't doing this, and they're not a good team.
All I can say is 3 of 10 on third down. Look at that, 3 of 10.
You know what, and well put from both of you too. That has been something else big within recent talks that I've heard in multiple radio shows as well when it comes to the third down efficiency or lack thereof, if you want to call it that. Right now, currently, right now, as we go into week 5, Cleveland is tied for the second lowest third down conversions per game at 2.8. That is interesting, and the percentage is even lower too. Yeah, it's just a bad look right now. To before we segue, to kind of answer real quick what you were asking earlier, Chris. It's very interesting because last year you would have just assumed or felt that they knew their identity and that the culture was taking a turn, which I've said it multiple times in my articles, and I felt it was too. But I think you do bring up a good point because it was the defense that knew their identity. The offense
Right.
never really found it. They just built upon the defense and then used that a bit to build upon and work their way from there. So I think that's a very valid, very, very, very good point. Terrific points from both of you. Now, we talked quite a bit, and well, real quick, Sapphire, do you have any more to vent about? Within the soapbox?
I mean, for me, the Browns are in jeopardy of being in shutdown mode for the rest of the season. If they don't find a way to win their next 2 games, I really, as much as I love the Browns, I really think they're in rebuild mode.
That is something that what they, depending on how things look the next couple weeks, because they already. This is only 4 games in, as you said, 25% of the season gone, and they're already in a mid-season crisis right now. So depending on how things looking at next week, I was gonna say ahead of week 6 playing Philly, but depending on what happens this Sunday, we might see some in-house changes, and I don't say that proudly. I say that in the sense of business. It's nothing personal, just business within the NFL because you want to win. They're in
Yeah.
that window.
And I tell you what, just the last comment, you and I both had the Browns losing at the Raiders this week.
You know what? I did, Chris. Chris might have chosen that too. I forget, but I know that.
Yeah, I think I did have them. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll say it is. I didn't want to, but I had to just because of what we've seen right now. Not so much picking with your heart, but what's in front of you right now, and what's in front of us right now is a team that has performed far below expectations with a lot of money owed to a number of
Yeah.
players on
Right.
this team.
If we had time, do I have a quick question? One
Yeah,
quick question.
yeah, what's up?
Ivory, what sense do you've been down? You've been down to the locker room and the practice facility. What are the players saying about? What are the players and really what are the coaches saying about it too? But what mood do you get from the players?
It's a good question. Earlier in the year, or I'll say this because, and we are live streaming on a Tuesday. We go back to the locker room tomorrow, Wednesday, after this game. After and post them losing to the Raiders and stuff, we'll be back in the locker rooms and everything tomorrow. I'll say this so to answer your question. Uh, the vibe was that they're a better team than they know they are, and that they'll pick it up ahead of this coming week. That really was especially after week one. Like they lose to Dallas, and I'm going and stuff. I can feel like it felt as though they weren't worried about that. They weren't like just like okay, that was a bad showing. We're going to pick it up, and which they did in week two. Well, somewhat at least defensively they did. Offensively, just that first half to show for, and then they carried into week three. But then that was a bad loss. So you felt it still had that sense, but a little bit more urgency. Like okay, we just lost to the Giants. That was not our expectation at all. So I'm going to answer with this. I think that it's going to be even more urgent ahead of this week within the locker room field. I think there's going to be a little bit more urgent, a little more. All right, we need to get going now and pick it up, kind of thing. It's been a little. In other words, it's been a little bit more relaxed than you would expect, or some would expect early on in the season. Now, I think it's going to be even more urgent because you've lost 3 of your first 4. What's up? So thank you for that question. I'll have much better, more precise answers with that question in the following weeks. Segue to something a little bit better. All right, let's smile a bit. Chris, you definitely will love this. The Baltimore Ravens. They have seen to really turn. They have seen to really turn things around right now. They are 2-2. Their second win right now again of the season. Second win in a row. They defeated the Buffalo Bills badly, might I add. Badly, that is. 35-10 Sunday Night Football. Wow. I mean, just wow. They were leading 21-3 at the end of the first half. And that it was ultra domination, point blank. Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry is a duo to be reckoned with.
Absolutely.
I
Absolutely.
fear for those within the division that have got to go up against this duo because even if you limit them, you have not fully stopped them. Thoughts on the win and the way that we've seen the Ravens turn things around the last couple of weeks after a questionable 0-2 start to the season.
I think they found what their mojo is. Derrick Henry in the last 2 weeks has been fire. He has been fire in the last, and that the first they set the tone of that game on that 87-yard run. I was like, oh my god! And then the rest of the half, Lamar's playing better, and then the big game, the big surprise for me, Justice Hill. If Justice Hill can play like that for the rest of the season, and then what happens if they get Isaiah Likely and Mark Andrews involved and the receivers involved? That they're going if they can maintain it. The problem that I'm kind of cynical about it at the same time because I want the Ravens to see the Ravens will go up to Cincinnati and that well then Cincinnati's going to play them because Cincinnati's a better team than what they've shown and whatnot. But the Ravens, if they can maintain that for the year, they'll be the most dominant team in football. I'm cynical of it because sometimes the Ravens, if you looked at last year, will play down to a level of their competition. They will sometimes, make it what like the Raiders game, an easy, which should have been an easy game, easy win for them. They'll overcomplicate it and make it harder. That's the only thing I worry about with the Ravens. But if that's their blueprint, they play to that blueprint this season, they're a Super Bowl contender. I still believe that, and I think that they can do that. But the thing is, it has to be consistent. It has to be every week, every quarter. They got to play every quarter. They're a weird team in that they can go lax at any time. No, that's all. I mean, but it was a great performance. Lamar played great. They're showing their different array of weapons. And although I do think with Derrick Henry, I would like to see them run a more I formation offense. Go back to that. Like I said, you put the fullback behind him and whatnot in front of him. and I think he's going to make some big plays. But they got to, and I watched that game somewhat in silence because I'm not going to say anything as a fan. I'm just going to say, okay, let's watch this game because I've gotten to a point where I know where the I don't know what I'm going to see from this team, and
Right.
then I'm up there. I'm being like, well, they'll figure out a way to keep Buffalo in this game, and then they go out, they create a fumble, and they just I don't like how they close it out. They've got to do that if they want to be that Super Bowl contender. They want to go back to Kansas City because I think they'll play again. They got to be dominant on every phase of the game every week. They got to be consistent. That's all I got to say about that.
Job well
You know,
done.
I,
Well
I'm
said.
I'm right there. Like what I have to do is I have to give Baltimore their props because there's these different stages of team development, and they're clearly in the forming the forming stage, right? About to kick up into performing. From where they started to where they are now, you got a balanced offensive attack. I mean, the King ran for what, almost 200 yards, 199 yards, averaged over
Mhm.
8 yards a carry. To your point, Chris, here comes Justice Hill. He had almost 100 yards combined between passing and receiving. We haven't even talked about Lamar Jackson. Like, I agree with you 100. The Baltimore Ravens have figured it out. The question is, can they clean it up a little bit, right? And then play
Mhm.
that way through the season. I definitely think they're a contender as well.
And
Terrific.
go ahead. I was gonna say, Irie, what did you see?
Yeah, I saw the same things that you guys saw as well. I saw ultra domination. This defense is just so sturdy, and I'd like to think that they just needed to get past that first game versus Kansas City because that is the only team. Chris, you said it earlier, so I'll give you your props on that. You said that is their kryptonite against any
Hmm.
other team in the league. They play like themselves versus the Chiefs. For some reason, whether they're home or away, Chiefs they get them out of the element and force them to play their style of pigskin ball. But regarding Sunday night, though, that was a terrific showing. Somewhat of a statement to say that we're not going anywhere. To me, that's what it felt like.
That was the state. It was a statement.
Even before the game, during that quick interview with Kyle Hamilton, and he was asked, who to worry about on defense, and he said anybody wearing black, which
There
was
you
the
go.
color of their uniforms. That mindset, that mentality, you knew what was coming right after that, and it showed. And this is going to be a team that team to be reckoned with, because we know that they're going to keep that mentality the rest of the season going forward and showing that they have not gone anywhere. And Derrick Henry, man, oh my gosh, 1 yard off of 200, and they thought he was washed. I don't know
Yep.
why. I don't understand
Yeah.
it. Uh, that
I
guy is
mean,
too. You were talking about I formation earlier. I was thinking like if they were to mess around and just go full house one of these days,
Mm.
oh my gosh, they're not gonna know.
yeah, they might even go wishbone or
Everybody say they might go
flatbone.
weird going on them. Oh man. So yeah, I saw exactly what you guys saw as well. And but furthermore, I saw a team that says we're ready to win the division again. To tie it back
Yeah,
to
and,
the Suns.
and I think Lamar relishes playing the point guard. Now
Yeah.
Extraordinary,
he relishes playing the point guard because he was getting the ball. And I know what I also like to see them do on certain passing downs. Go 12 personnel. Go. Get two tight ends, two wides, and running back. And basically, like and then you can either put Henry in there on a third down or have Justice Hill coming out of the backfield and everything because if you throw the ball up in the seam, which Lamar likes to do, who's going to stop Andrews or Isaiah Likely in that scene? Who's going to stop him? I can't. I don't see anybody if they would do that. But like I just worry sometimes that they overcomplicate things. Don't Lamar doesn't have to pass for 300 yards, but there'll be a time when he's going to have to. There'll be a time, and I think he's equipped to do that. And I think in the end, but I'm impressed with the Cal Van Noy. That guy, him and
Mm.
him and Kyle, him and Hamilton are like beasts, and Maurice Humphrey. They did a good job of covering Buffalo's receivers. And Buffalo has, although I will say Josh Allen made one heck of a play when they were being rushed to the sideline, and he found Shakur wide open, and they got into that was the only touchdown drive of the night. But I do think that the Ravens are still a work in progress. Talk to me in about 4 or 5 weeks. When if they've won five in a row or something like that. But I think they're doing well. I think they just got to be consistent. That's all I ask is to do it every week. Be consistent.
Okay. Any last thoughts within the Ravens right now, Seth, for the moment, that is?
I just wanted to co-sign Kyle Hamilton, Marlon Humphrey, 10 tackles, 3 assists combined. They're young. They know their role. They have motivation. They have the right mentality. They have an identity as well. And I just see, again, the Baltimore Ravens, they're a team to be reckoned with, not only in the North, but they're a contender for the playoffs. I don't know if I'm going to say Super Bowl yet, but they're definitely hitting their stride.
This is what I will end it off within this before we segue to the other two teams in the division saying. I think I said this last week too, but within this being the first special episode, I'll repeat it once again. I am scared for what Derrick Henry may do to the Browns. Not and not just within this past, recent performance, run defense wise versus the Raiders. I felt this way before week 4 versus the Raiders for the Browns because of the fact that when you go back to last year, during Derrick's last season with Tennessee, the Browns gave him trouble. It was one of the worst games, at least first half wise, within his career. I believe he had -7 rushing yards in the first half last year in our week 3 game versus the Browns when he was still with Tennessee. He finished that game with, and I'm not starting on this, 11 carries for 20 yards. He had 1.8 per carry. That is far from what we would expect from Derrick Henry. It was the lowest yards of a first half from him, and his 20 yards tied for 11th in his career rankings of lowest rushing yards in the game. He gave nothing but props afterwards, but I just know he has that game circled, knowing what they did to him last year, and he's ready to go off even more versus them. But that we won't see them play until week 8 of that season. But that is the one thing I'm telling you. The closest that we get to, especially if Henry keeps up this production, oh man.
That's kind of you to say because looking ahead to that game, I absolutely expect Henry to go north of 200 yards against the Browns. The Browns defense, I am telling you, the Browns, they're not a good team. So I expect Derrick Henry, the King, to have probably the most best rushing game of the season versus the Browns.
Understandable. All right, let's move on to the other team. I mean, technically the best team, right, by record within the division, the Pittsburgh Steelers, 3-1, suffer their first loss of the season. That is to the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think many people expected that to start the season. Them winning 3 of their first 4, winning their first 3 exactly to be at. But yet here we are, and I think it's best to start off by saying this just shows the kind of culture they have. Sapphire, as you would say.
Yeah, no, I mean, for me, I'm a firm believer that defense wins games. And the Steelers let the Colts score 27 points right there.
14
Was
first
it,
quarter.
yeah, and was it a well managed game on the field by Fields? No, but I really thought after they made their halftime adjustments, he came out a completely different quarterback. And I thought the Steelers had an opportunity to win that game. But when you get in the hole, right, and you're trying to catch up, there's a whole other dimension to it as well. So I thought I saw enough of different from Justin Fields. I'm going to say this to Steelers Nation. He should continue to be your starting quarterback. Okay. I think he learned a lot about himself within that game. And I see that his teammates, they look like they have more confidence in him, right? And on any given Sunday. So I thought for me that was more of a defensive letdown in that game. And I don't think that really changes anything that I feel about the Steelers, right? At all. So I actually hate to sound like most coaches do on their Monday pressers, but that game is behind them. I think they're gonna, especially with the dynamic head coach that they have in Mike Tomlin, they've taken away what they need to. They're gonna reformulate, repackage, and I expect them to win next week.
Wow. I'm gonna agree with you because in that loss, especially the second half, I thought Fields played well. 22 of 34, 312 yards and one touchdown. I think that they need to work with him more. We all saw him at Ohio State. We all saw him. We all. I mean,
I'm
I'm,
sorry. I'm sorry for cutting you off. You're on a roll. The
Oh,
Ohio State University.
okay, all right, okay. The Ohio State University. I went to the Michigan State University as well, and of course, my wife is an Ohio State alum. But here's the deal: Fields was a good passer.
Mhm.
And I don't think he's ever had anybody to work with him because I think that if you can get him to have more confidence in that passing pocket and the way he moves around, I mean, the way he moves around. So he had 312 yards passing, right? 312 yards passing, and he had 56 yards rushing and everything. So when you break it all down, he accounted for 368 of their 404 yards of total offense. Okay, when you look at and the thing about it, when last time you've seen the Steelers roll 400 yards of total
That's
offense in
right.
the game? I
That's
mean,
right.
when the
Yep.
last time you've seen that, right? And so you got to give him props. And of course the Steelers lost to an old friend of ours from Baltimore, Mr. Joe Flacco, and because Anthony Richardson is kind of injury prone, he got hurt.
Mhm.
But the thing about Jonathan Taylor, had a big game, had 88 yards rushing. But like I said, when they start utilizing Fields' passing ability, I mean, when you think about the quarterbacks in this division, good lord, they're all mobile quarterbacks, including Joe Burrow. You think about the quarterbacks in this division. He's going to be Fields is a handful of stops. He can run that football.
Mhm.
Okay,
Mhm. Mhm.
so so the Steelers, I mean, the offense played their best game of the season in a loss, but the defense didn't step up. And when you get that combination, when you get those things, the Steelers are going to be tough. And as Fields starts to get better in the passing game, then I'm going to have to order more antacids and figure out more ways that God will that God will help Pittsburgh to win and figure and Pittsburgh will figure I'll figure out the Ravens will figure out more ways to lose to Pittsburgh and all that. That's another team that's that
yeah,
semi Achilles heel and everything, but they always manage to somehow beat Pittsburgh too. But Pittsburgh, you gotta play Pittsburgh and beat them until they can't get up. That's how you have to take on Pittsburgh. That's what, and if Justin Fields can find his mojo in the passing game and start becoming consistent in the passing game, Lord help him. I got to do the whole Catholic priest, sign of the cross for the rest of the division. Lord have mercy, because
yeah,
Pittsburgh, it's just that's the thing. They get him passing consistently. Oh my God.
they
What I
do.
mean, what do we have here?
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for that. So I'll start off just with two things, primarily within the first time within offensively. It was nice to watch them go out and fight within the second half. 21 of the 24 points did come in the second half. It seemed in the first half that by each series they were moving closer and closer. They were progressing. It might have been a punt, or even later on towards the end of the first half, there was that fumble from Pickens, and it was recovered by Indianapolis on their own 3 yard line, pretty much right near the goal line, and then he finally get a field goal at the end. So they were progressing and getting closer in.
Yeah.
But here's the other part too. In Sapphire, I gave you this credit because you talk about matchups and coincidences. For one, offensive coordinator Jim Bob Cooter, for some reason, just has his way. Just has his he has the AFC North's number. When the Colts played four AFC North teams last season, the Colts won two of those four. The third, what could have been a potential, they beat the Ravens. and they beat the Steelers. What could have been a third potential win was versus the Browns in that Week 7 matchup, but that
Yeah.
was at the last second down to the wire, won by the Browns with only a couple of few seconds left. So he asked their number. Number two, they had quarterback that played most of the game and relieved Anthony Richardson of injury. So happens to know the AFC North better than all of us, and Joe Flacco, who was picked up by Indianapolis, and he did his thing versus versus the Steelers. You want to talk about numbers? Completed 16 of his 26 for 168 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 0 picks. And that's somebody who was actually just playing with the Browns, as we know of. Sapphire. I try my best not to mention that, but it was hard for me
Thank you.
not to. Sorry. Um, so yeah, those are the other two connections that come to mind. You have an OC that knows the division well, and that's how they're always able to put up points versus any team in this division. And number two, their quarterback does as well, having played a long time with the Ravens and then the Browns recently this last year. So those are the two takeaways that I had that makes it a little bit less surprising, in which the coach coming away with the win and giving Pittsburgh their first loss of the season. However, I will say first loss of the season. No need, I feel, for the Steelers to really worry or pander. They're going to get even better from this. It's within the culture, it's within the mentality. They fight. They are the ant that you step on, and they still crawling somehow. So, any last thoughts before we segue onto the last team of this division?
It was curious to me that TJ was held to 0 solo tackles. He had a couple of assists, but I thought that was really key for the Colts as well. So I expect him next week to make up for that as well. He is beast, and for me, definitely headed to be Defensive Player of the Year.
Understandable. Last team, also technically tied for third with the Browns in the division, but as I said earlier, may not feel the way. However, the Bengals did enter the win column for the first time all season. Maybe not the most convincing win, but they're in the win column. Can't take that away from them. They defeated the Carolina Panthers 34-24. Definitely a bounce back game. Bill Burrow completed 22 of his 31 passes, 232 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 pick. Yeah, I mean, thoughts on the. I know it was the Panthers. I know that's the team I feel many people don't expect to win as many games as one as as fingers as you have on one hand. But thoughts within Cincinnati just going out and taking all their anger out on Carolina and wanting to bounce back and show they still have it.
I mean, no, I think it's always there's a different kind of like dynamic when you have a player or a coach go up against their former team, right? I actually picked the Panthers for that because Dalton, was starting. But I think my one of my biggest takeaways is the number of points that Cincinnati put back on the board. So for all the haters out there that Burrow was hurt, he's not himself, and there's drama with Chase not getting his contract, blah blah blah. This game, they came together. I mean, Jamar Chase, 3 for 85 yards, 1 touchdown. Burrow also linked up with Chase Brown, 15 carries, 80 yards, 2 touchdowns. It just feels like, except for that one interception that Joe Burrow had, seems like he's finding himself, right? So I think that their record does not reflect their capability, right?
Mm-hmm.
Unlike the Cleveland Browns. So it's going to be interesting, to see how they, take their next step next week.
Well, I'm gonna tell you something. Maybe that they were still in preseason mode in some of those games. When you look at some of the records around the league, I think that I look at teams that should be winning, that they have all the talent. You know, it's it's not getting guys on the field during preseason. You're seeing it. You're seeing it in some of the inconsistent play. Why the Ravens are 2-2, and I look at Cincinnati. Cincinnati, although they were a bad call away from beating Kansas City and whatnot. And I'm not saying that because I'm a Ravens fan. I can't stand Kansas City, but I am saying that. I am saying that because you see how good they are. They got Jamar Chase got involved, had that long 63-yard touchdown. I mean, and he broke tackles. I mean, nobody could bring him down.
Mhm.
So I think these what we're learning around the league is that we are still in preseason mode from a lot of teams around the league. You're seeing it even Kansas City, even though they won their game. They they lost one of their receivers, but a lot of times teams are still trying to find themselves. I mean, at this point of the year. So you wonder some teams are going to react to it better than others. I think Cincinnati is going to give Baltimore a game in Sunday. I don't think the Ravens are going to march through that city and just act like they're Sherman in Georgia during the Civil War and whatnot. I don't think they're going to march like that. That's going to be a tough. I'm worried about that game more than anything else because the Bengals are trying to prove something to themselves and all that as well. So that's going to be a tough game next week. So the Bengals, they found their mojo in beating Cleveland. I mean, beating Carolina. I'm sorry, not Cleveland. I said beating
Yeah,
Carolina. Carolina is a hot ghetto mess and whatnot. And I just think at the end of the day that the Bengals are going to be hungry and because they play the Ravens tough too. I mean, it's a divisional game, so I don't expect to see what I saw in Baltimore against the Bills last week. The Ravens are gonna have to go up there and fight these guys because I think they have that chip on their shoulder. They want to prove that those games they lost to the Ravens last year wasn't was that they want to prove
yeah.
themselves and whatnot. So I think that the Bengals it's a good turnaround game for them just to find their mojo. They started, but now you got to play Baltimore. That's going to be tough, but we'll see.
Yes, indeed. Thank you. The one takeaway that I found interesting within this game was that the Bengals had 130 of their 141 total rushing yards in the second half. It wasn't really kicking in the first half, but really came through in the second half. When I understand that they relied more so on Joe Burrow, who had around 160 plus of his yards in that first half. But that was very interesting. But you know what else was really interesting to me though, and this has been a trend right now. And after this week, they tied for the second fewest sacks per game at 1.3. They had zero sacks that entire game. Zero. Carolina's O line is not the best, not the most sturdiest. Andy Dalton is not the most mobile quarterback in the league. Zero sacks. Surely nice to see Logan Wilson coming off with 10, five of that being sold. Nice to see DJ Turner do his thing, two passes deflected or defended against. Nice to see their D backs back in action, really doing well, doing what they can. It's just a very interesting stat to me though, or at least take away from that game in which they were still able to come out with zero sacks versus them. Because yes,
No, I was just going to say I'm listening to because I'm thinking what the Ravens are the number one ranked offense, total offense, right? At this point in the season, 429.5 yards, right? Going against the number 15th defense in the Bengals, right? At 326.8 yards allowed. With King Henry, Chris, Irie, I expect Baltimore to win by like at least 10 points at the Bengals.
yeah, well, we'll get to that soon. And
Sorry, just had
no,
to
no,
throw
no,
those stats out.
no, no, no. Thank you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You're in a bed real soon. But yeah, I just meant as I said, just within the sense of, there's being a more sturdy and better defensive line than we would know. Uh, and finished 18th last year and with 2.6 sacks against. So I just found that very interesting. But all in all, I agree with what you two were saying. They do seem to be hungry now. Seem to have that edge of all right, we got one. Okay, we're good. We got that. We got that offer back. Now let's go and play winning football. And we can segue now into the games next week. And you both had mentioned earlier, so we'll just kind of go with that right now. The Baltimore Ravens and Cincinnati Bengals play each other this Sunday, 1 p.m. This is the first AFC North matchup of the season, the first team versus team within the division matchup ahead. So definitely looking forward to this. And thoughts, predictions on what can happen. Sapphire, you want to go furthermore with what you were saying,
I mean,
bro?
I'll just repeat what I said. I expect Baltimore to go to Cincinnati and whoop some butt. I mean, they have too many weapons. They have too balanced of an offense. King Henry, number one ranked offense versus 15th ranked defense. I mean, unless they miss the plane, maybe. I just see predict complete domination by the Baltimore Ravens at Cincinnati.
Well, I'm going to predict that the Ravens will win, but that game will be a lot closer than we thought. I mean, I would even maybe give +3. I would give the points to Cincinnati. I think Baltimore ultimately wins that game, but it's a division matchup, and I think Baltimore has a tendency to play down to its competition, and they have a tendency to do that. And but I also think Cincinnati is going to come in there a little hungry. The Ravens will eventually punch them in the mouth. You know, it'll be a good fight. It'll be a good fight. It'll be a good fight. The Ravens eventually prevail.
Okay. I too will go with the Ravens. The one reason why is because Cincinnati right now is bottom 10 in rushing yards allowed per game at 145.5. Henry has already exceeded that twice. So while they're going to be game planning on that, they'll also open up opportunities elsewhere within the pass game. I wouldn't even be surprised if Justin Hill, who had 96 total yards from scrimmage this past week versus Buffalo, became an
Hmm.
even bigger option offensively going into Cincinnati because all eyes will be on King Henry, as they call him. So I too have the Ravens winning. I think that the final scoreboard will show a closer score, but I think that the Ravens will be comfortable though for majority of the game, and Cincinnati just tries to find their way and trail back. That's what I say though. Going into the Browns, they have Washington on the road. Thoughts, Sapphire predictions. You before anybody, of course.
I want to click my heels 3 times. Was that the Wizard of Oz?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
I just the Browns are not a good football team. Jada Daniels is on fire. It's a home game for the Commanders. I hate that I'm going to be attending the game in person in full Browns regalia. I hate that I'm going to this game. My heart, my fandom wants my Browns to win, and then my common sense tells me that based on what I've seen this year, it would be an enormous task for them to go in the DC and win that game. I just they're not integrated. They're not playing well. So like just yuck.
Well, I'm going to say this. I think that right now the one saving grace for the Browns is that they've seen a similar quarterback within their own division in Lamar Jackson. But let me tell you something about Jaden Daniels. To me, as a rookie, as a passer, better than Lamar Jackson as a rookie as a passer and whatnot. He's better than him, and I gotta say that because the way I look at it, you know, he can still pass. He's passing efficiently now because the Commanders have a running game, and when they run the football, that opens up everything for Jaden Daniels. He's also a threat to run. He will be a threat to run, but he can pass. He has a lot of accuracy, and so that's going to be a tough. I'm going to say the Commanders win that game, you know, and add another
Okay.
feather to their cap, and further scare my friends in the NFC East.
All right. This one I've thought about quite a bit. Last week I said the Raiders. I didn't want to. I'm gonna be hard headed and choose the Browns this time because everybody's counting them out. So I see why not. But then them leveling up to the challenge, uh, finding a way within at least offensively. However that be within the play calling, shorter play routes, a little bit more engineering within the run game. It'll be interesting to see. And I'll also give Jim Schwartz the benefit of the doubt with then wanting to shut down any opposing quarterbacks that are going to the game hot. He's had a history within that. Even going back to last year, Brock Purdy, they were talking about him being an
Mm.
MVP conversation. Goes into Cleveland week 6, 125 passing yards, worst game of his season. Maybe even correct that. So I'm gonna give the Browns the edge in this. Not that I want to. I this is against my will. I'm being alright and choosing them. All right. So you're
Well, there's some precedent to that now. One of the major point spreads that I'm seeing, and I'm trying to figure out where this. I see this is on Sports Illustrated. They are saying that some one point spread says Browns +3 and all that, and Commanders -3. The money line is saying Commanders -156, Browns +32. So if you take the points, and if I were a betting man, I'd probably take the points. I say the Browns can make this close, but I'm gonna, like I say, you know, I don't know if I'm a Bill. Then again, let me say I cheat. I'll bet both sides and pray for a miracle and whatnot. But the thing about it though, I think the Commanders have to be favored given their performance and how they throttled Cincinnati and offered them no quarter, as they say in military talk. And they basically, just you know, they're the hot team in the league. But it goes back to identity. The Browns have to establish who they are physically, defensively, and offensively, and that's going to be the key. The Browns have to figure it out if they're going to win, because I don't think they have to this point.
me neither. And we'll know more answers regarding that going in. But right now, week 5, Sunday night football, very very big game
Yeah.
for you two as well, just within the sense of historic rivalry and everything falling in line between the Steelers hosting the Dallas Cowboys. This is going to be a game. I look forward to this more than any game within this division. Uh, wow. Predictions, thoughts within this team, a rivalry, a matchup that you guys have seen for a long time.
I mean, for me, it's not like going to be apples to apples, right? I mean, you got Parsons in a boot on a scooter today. It's up in the air if he's going to play. You got Demarcus Lawrence out. To me, there's a clear path for Justin Fields to show the world on an international level, like he's coming out. Like he should not, with the line that they have, he should not really feel any pressure, right? So I expect him to have a really good big game at home. I expect TJ, who was pretty much put on mute yesterday or Sunday, come out, have a great defensive game. Unfortunately, as good as Dak looks in his uniform, he's so inconsistent for me and I like the Cowboys. America's team, grew up watching them. I just think that offense is really inconsistent. And I think the environment, the atmosphere, all of the terrible towels, I got to take the Steelers in this game.
Well, I was going to do my Myron Cope imitation. The Cowboys cow fight that fight, and the Cowboys are going to have a long day. So from that standpoint, from that standpoint, Dallas, they didn't show me much of the Giants game. They really have neglected the running game, and you see it in the person they brought back, Ezekiel Elliott, who in running back years is about 107 years old, and all that. And so and so from that standpoint, I see Pittsburgh win. I think Pittsburgh is trending up. I see Pittsburgh winning that game over the Cowboys as much as because back in the day, I rooted for the Cowboys against Pittsburgh because then again, I think I probably rooted for everybody against Pittsburgh. So let me say that. But I think the Steelers win that game. I think Jerry Jones needs to learn to sit in the press box and be quiet.
Good luck with that
Yeah,
one.
Yeah.
well, yeah, that's the thing. But that's not you and I both know that ain't all three of y'all, both
Yeah.
two of y'all know that ain't gonna happen. Pittsburgh wins. Pittsburgh wins by 5.
All
It's going to be
right.
a great game.
I also have Pittsburgh too. I think the culture thrives, and they're going to find a way to limit Dallas. Or usually Dallas will be the ones to do it themselves. We know that more than anybody. But yeah, I too have Pittsburgh thriving and doing well within the Sunday night atmosphere. All right, that is all. We've gone over the games. We've gone over the predictions. We're going to be very interesting to see within the jam-packed week 5 ahead. Thank you all for tuning in to the first official live streaming episode of Fear the North podcast. within the Shake Back group. And thank you so much for being there. And from Sapphire, Chris Murray, and myself, Ivory Harris, take care. You'll have a good one.
Okay, take care.